Good morning, everyone. Your morning weather briefing for July 11th finds that there are no major changes in the forecast versus what I presented yesterday. Your temperature and rainfall outlooks this morning, still plenty of heat in the forecast in the near term for the Corn Belt as a whole and in southeastern portion of the Corn Belt into early next week, but certainly that heat is going to be eventually breaking in the week 2 time frame all across the Corn Belt, and for that matter, a good portion of the nation's midsection. Still looking at some rainfall to be developing in the Corn Belt in the far northwest anyway for late tonight, and that will kick off a rainfall threat that will last through the 6 to 10 day time frame. Still a limited confidence situation for the 11 to 15 day period, and as always, would not be surprising to see that forecast turn out to be wetter than I'm suggesting there. QPF discussion for the 1 to 5 day time frame. I'm not going to be making any major disagreements versus what is shown. Maybe the map is a little bit overzealous with the southward extent of good rainfall in this period, although overall in a situation like this, the rainfall does tend to be verifying further south what the models would suggest. I also think that it's probably overdoing rainfall coverage in the southeastern Corn Belt in this period. A lot of that area probably seeing nothing at all, but other than that, no major disagreements with this forecast. Would not be surprising at all to see localized rains in the western and northwestern Corn Belt be even heavier than this map would suggest. Then as we get towards the day 6 to 7 time frame, I think that this map overall is got to lean towards the European model. The GFS model would have a drier forecast for the northwestern Corn Belt. Overall, though, you'd have to think that rainfall amounts in this period will be somewhat heavier than the map would suggest. Afternoon high temperatures yesterday, 80s and 90s across the Corn Belt. Pretty notable yesterday was the extreme 95 to 100 degree heat that we saw yesterday across the southwestern Corn Belt, across a good portion of eastern Kansas and Missouri. It really shows you where the Corn Belt is driest right now. It is the dry soils that have the easiest time in warming up, and that is in the southwestern Corn Belt where the soils are the driest right now, and that is where they saw the biggest heat yesterday, and it's probably going to be the area seeing the biggest heat for the next several days as well. Temperatures as of 5 o'clock this morning, still a lot of 70 plus degree temperatures as of 5 o'clock this morning in western and far southern portion of the Corn Belt, while it was cooler in northeastern areas. Rainfall totals through 1 o'clock this morning. A big portion of the Corn Belt saw nothing yesterday, but certainly what rain was seen was heavier than expected across the far northwestern Corn Belt and across portions of the eastern Corn Belt as well. You can see those two areas depicted as far as radar estimated rainfall since 7 o'clock yesterday morning. Radar very quiet all across the nation this morning. The only thunderstorm activity of note being very widely scattered in nature across the northern plains. As far as the forecast is concerned, look for the vast majority of the Corn Belt to be dry during the daytime hours on this Wednesday, but for very late tonight, we'll start to see some shower and thunderstorm activity working into far northwestern portions of the Corn Belt, and that will be kicking off what should be a daily threat of rainfall somewhere in the Corn Belt on every day for the rest of the 5-day forecast period and right into the 6 to 10 day time frame. Looking at surface features as we get towards 7 o'clock in the morning on Friday, you can see that there is very good model agreement that a cool front is starting to sag into the northwestern Corn Belt at that time. It's going to be producing a shower and thunderstorm activity, especially right around the Iowa-Minnesota border area. Would not be surprising to me at all to see some of that activity be quite heavy in nature for that area. As we get towards 7 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, you can see that the models are in agreement on a broad area of rainfall across the various portions of the Corn Belt at that time. Not a whole lot of agreement on specifics, but again, it would be a threat of rainfall for that period. As we get towards the 6 to 10 day time frame, just looking at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday, some model differences showing up, but they are still showing some rainfall in the Corn Belt at that time. Maybe the European ensemble would actually be more like the GFS operational model than the European operational model. But again, the bottom line is that once we start to see some rains working their way back into the far northwestern Corn Belt for late tonight, I do believe it to be a situation where there is going to be some rain somewhere in the Corn Belt on a daily basis right through at least the end of the 10-day time frame. Rainfall in some areas on most any of those days being significant in nature, and could be seeing some locally heavy totals at times during that time frame as well. So when you look at 10-day rainfall forecast from the various models, again emphasizing I do not want anyone want to really focus on the specifics of any of these rainfall forecasts. But what you can see is that all of the models are in agreement that we are looking at the next 10 days to be a significant wet period across the Corn Belt. The best rains in the 1 to 5 day time frame going to be in the northwestern Corn Belt for the 6 to 10 day period, more towards central and southern portion of the Corn Belt. I think that everyone in the Corn Belt has a chance at least an inch of rainfall during the next 10 days. As always in a summertime rainfall situation, there will be places that by luck or circumstance do not get that much, but everyone has a chance for an inch of rainfall, and I think that there can be some localized heavy amounts of rainfall during that period of 2 inches or even more than that. As far as the temperature forecast is concerned, plenty of above normal temperatures in the forecast all across the Corn Belt for at least the rest of this week. Temperature anomalies for Saturday, which should be overall the warmest day with respect to normal across the Corn Belt. You can see the temperatures on Saturday running easily above normal all across the Corn Belt region. Specifics as far as high temperatures are concerned, most of the Corn Belt in the 90s that day. You can see that the European model indicating an extensive area of 95 to 100 plus degree heat that day. I think that it is overdone, but as we saw yesterday when we saw a lot of 95 to 100 degree heat in Missouri and nearby areas, I do think that it is Missouri and nearby areas that will see a lot of 95 to 100 plus degree heat, probably the warmest temperatures there for tomorrow right through at least Sunday. Low temperature forecast, certainly very warm overnight lows going to be a factor. Several mornings coming up in which lows will be in the 70s across a good portion of the Corn Belt. Some days in which lows above 70 degrees are going to be widespread. One of those days looking to be Sunday, in which you can see the European model indicating widespread 70 plus degree lows across the Corn Belt and even area in the Iowa-Missouri border area where low temperatures on Sunday morning may be struggling to get below the 80 degree mark. Still looking at Sunday to be a warm day across the vast majority of the Corn Belt, but some cooler weather going to be working into far western portion of the Corn Belt on Sunday. And then as we get towards Monday, July 16th, you can see that cooler air starting to work into a bigger portion of the western Corn Belt, though at the same time, Monday is still going to be a very warm day in the southern and southeastern Corn Belt, and will probably be to July 18th or even July 19th before that area sees a moderation in temperatures. But as we get towards July 19th, looking at the European operational models, temperature anomaly forecasts for that day, you can see that the entire Corn Belt is either in below or much below normal readings. Might be a little bit extreme as far as the European model is concerned with regards to how cool it looks that day, but again, by no later than July 19th, we'll be seeing the heat breaking all across the Corn Belt. The July 19th and 20th time frame probably being a couple of days in which most of the Corn Belt sees below normal temperature readings. As we get towards the 11 to 15 day period, looking at 500 millibars, you can see that any dome of high pressure at the beginning of the 11 to 15 day period taking up its normal summertime residence in the Four Corners region, a bit of a northwesterly flow aloft, probably keeping at least some rainfall chances in the Corn Belt at that time. For the end of the 11 to 15 day period, again, the dome of high pressure in its typical summertime location in the Four Corners region, northwesterly flow aloft, keeping rainfall chances in the Corn Belt, and making me wonder, as always, if the models are not too pessimistic about rainfall chances in the 11 to 15 day period. Internationally this morning, very good rain is going to be seen in Poland over the next 10 days. A lot of that area seeing 2 to 4 inch rainfall amounts. Pretty limited rain still going to be seen across a lot of Germany, France, and England for the next 10 days. A lot of the rain that is shown there is going to be falling in the 11 to 15 day period. I view the forecast as still trending a little bit wetter for the summer row crop areas of the former Soviet Union. You can see there that normal to above normal rainfall is expected there for the next 2 weeks. Still going to be several days away before that rain gets started in the dry eastern areas, but once the rain gets started there on Sunday and lasts through the end of the 2 week time frame, I think that a lot of the area could see at least an inch of rainfall, especially northern Ukraine and areas to the north of there seeing 2 week rainfall totals of more than 2 inches. Still going to be seeing a lot of 90 plus degree heat for the rest of this week in southern district and nearby areas, but that heat will break next week as the rainfall chances there increase. Still a situation where the spring grain areas of the former Soviet Union will see their best rains favoring western areas versus areas further to the east. In the corn and soybean areas of China, still some very nice rains coming up over the next 2 weeks for Manchurian corn and soybean areas, but you can really note there that the forecast is really going to be dry for a big portion of the North China Plain for the next 2 weeks. Any rain that is going to be seen favoring just far western and far northwestern portion of the North China Plain for today through about Friday before even that area dries out considerably for the rest of the 2 week time frame. So don't be surprised at all to see some concerns eventually showing up regarding dryness for the North China Plain, especially when you consider that temperatures all across the corn and soybean areas of China look to be averaging above normal for the next 2 weeks. Fairly decent forecast for the Canadian prairies. Going to be seeing fairly limited rainfall across far southern and far western portion of the growing area, but you can see that northeastern portion of the growing area looking at wonderful rains for the next 10 days. Still a dry forecast for the Australian wheat areas. No more is that the case than the next 2 weeks for New South Wales and into Queensland. And finally for this morning, the Indian monsoon looks quite good for especially a big portion of their major groundnut and oilseed areas in the north, Gujarat and into Madhya Pradesh, looking especially good on rainfall in that period. That's what I have for your Wednesday. Everyone have themselves a great day.